another Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. So I see people are checking in. That's great, right? We're recording this live for those of you who are maybe checking it out on Facebook or YouTube or whatever as a recording. But we're here with our weekly strategy and tactics lesson, right? So I'm not the trained monkey today, right? I'm not going to be demonstrating things. We're going to be taking one of the concepts, one of our training, right, to understand it better. That way you can work it into your training and take things farther. Okay. So if you're one of my students, right, then this is just an extra piece, right? We go into it much more deeply in classes and things like that. But anyway, right. So let's start out by taking a look at what we're doing, right? Obviously, if you saw the little billboards or whatever the hell they are, right, that we put online, right? I titled this "Power of Kamae." Okay, we want to go beyond, right, this idea of making the same kind of mistake that 90%, 95% of students and instructors make when they're taking a look at this aspect of ninjutsu, or if you're in any other martial art that uses this idea of Kamae, right? So, power of Kamae. So the problem is that everyone sees, and when I say everyone, I mean virtually everyone, right? Sees and even defines or describes Kamae as stances, okay? The word for stance and the word for posture, attitude, what these two things that we're talking about and we need to differentiate have very different words in the Japanese language, okay? So during today's episode, we're going to be looking at our Kamae much more deeply, right? We need to look at it much more deeply so we can break free of the limitation that's holding most people back. And we need to understand three things, right? I can't cover all of it today. We can look at three things, right? One, we're going to look at Kamae as physical and tactical advantages, right? As techniques in and of themselves, right? As a setup, as a trap, right? As being the alpha and omega of our entire defense, okay? The beginning and end of the whole thing, right? So we'll talk about how we do that shortly, right? So we're also going to take a look as a tactical tool, right? In a minute, I'll make sure that everybody's on the same music when I talk about tactics, right? But as a tactical tool, okay? Again, we'll talk about that in a bit. But you know what? Let's get this out of the way because I wasn't thinking about this when I made my notes. But I want to make sure everybody's on the same sheet of music so that you don't have to go digging back through past episodes and things like that, right? To make sure we're all in the same place. Now, if you go to a thesaurus, right? That's the word dinosaur, right? Thesaurus. Anyway, what you could often see techniques, tactics, strategies, and all that as synonyms, right? As different words that mean the same thing in this little catalog, right? But the reality is that they're very, very different, and they're actually three different aspects of training. There's an old Whiteboard Wednesday. You can take a look at that, right? Find that kind of stuff, right? But if we look at techniques, right? Another one of those words like enlightenment and warriorship and all that crap that kind of gets thrown around, right? Techniques, right? We define it as things you do with your body or with your body parts, right? To his body or their parts, okay? Think onikodaki, omotegyaku, right? This shito to uko, those kind of things, right? So a technique is something that you're doing with your body to his body, okay? I'm going to jump over tactics because that's what we're talking about today, right? Strategies, right? Strategies are outcomes, okay? Let's make this really, really simple for today. Where do I want his body to end up and how? Okay? Because if we just define it as I want him on the ground, well, then it doesn't matter what we do, right? We could trip him, we could hit him, whatever, right? But why? Okay? So for those of you who don't know, I'm an ex-federal police officer. So if I need somebody over the hood of their vehicle, or if I need them face down so I can get him into do a quick pat down search, get him into cuffs more easily and stuff like that, then I need to choose my techniques very, very carefully so that what I do, everything that I do leads him in that direction. Anything that I do that moves him away from that direction causes, one, the fight to last longer, two, it causes me to exert more effort and energy, and three, gives him openings and loopholes to try to get out of, okay? So what my agenda is, right? And in the beginning, for most students, it's just to get the hell out of Dodge, right? To get the guy down, get out, whatever. That's a cool strategy, right? But for upper level people, if somebody invades the dojo here, comes into my house, whatever, my goal might not be to drop them on the ground and get them all locked up. It might be to get them back out the closest door, the one they came in, that kind of thing, right? So again, I need to be able to steer them. It requires a whole lot more skill than just thumping and bumping and knowing my techniques, okay? So strategies are outcomes, right? That's where I want him to be and how, right? Face down, face up, on his side, with his spine and organs, facing my feet, whatever, okay? So the bridge between those two are tactics, okay? Tactics are things you do to make your techniques easier to do and makes it easier to produce the outcome. Okay? Makes it easier to produce the outcome. So again, I know this takes more thinking than just where do I put my foot? Okay? So if that's the phase or stage you're in, if you're aiming higher, then hold on to the bar. I'm going to give you a whole bunch. It'll give you something to aim for later. If all you ever want to know is how to do the techniques, how to collect the kata, where to put your foot, that kind of thing, then I'm not your guy. This is just going to be a whole bunch of stuff that you don't want to have to think about. Okay? So it's just easy. Click the back button, go about your day, and say anything or whatever about me, the program, whatever. You do you. Okay? But techniques, tactics, and strategies. We need to be careful that we're not lumping these things all together because each one has a specific effect, right? Gives you a certain type of advantage. There's certain things that you're doing, right? Okay. Anyway, so, and again, this is for other parts of training and other topics, but just like we have to be able to get so good at our techniques that we can feel a mushadori happening and we just kind of catch it, right? We don't try to jump on them and do one. I mean, you can, right? But if you do that, there's a bunch of tells, physical, visual, all that kind of stuff. They're going to cue him into it, and he's going to instinctively, respond against it, right? But if I understand, it's much easier to catch like one of these shoulder dislocations, upward, out, low lifting kind of things, right? If he throws a punch and then I understand that his arm is retracting after he punches, right? Boom, this kind of thing. If I can throw my arm in while it's retracting, he bent his damn arm for me. And if I can understand that he's retracting this one to throw the next one, right? I can throw my arm in and catch this and then apply it at the same time I'm avoiding the next shot because I caught this. Next shot comes in and, oh, shit, right? And the technique just kind of happens, right? Even in the scrolls, it says the way to always have the perfect technique for any given moment is to never do a technique that's not already happening. Okay? I know, it sounds duh, but getting there. But just like we need to be able to just feel things happening and let the technique happen, and we're just going to catch it, right? Tactics and strategies. Now, we're going to have this going in, but this is something that we have to get so good at that we no longer think about it in the conventional sense. I'm trying to do this when he does that, right? If you're doing that, you're stuck in left brain, you're going to get your ass handed to you, okay? That's where people tend to focus on strength and speed a lot, right? Because they got to go faster because they're slowing themselves down because they're mentally thinking about what he just did, what I'm going to do, that kind of stuff, right? You need to be able to feel space, that kind of thing. That's why the primary principle for like the first kata in most of these lineages, Gyoko school, Koto school, that kind of thing, right, is to find the way, to feel, to play in space, these kind of things, to find the most natural way, right? Shinden Fudo Ryu, Togakure Ryu, all these things, right? It's either the strategy of the lineage itself or this key piece, this key technique that everything else will be based off of, right? So really, really important stuff, okay? Only if you think it's important. To me, I think it's pretty cool shit. But okay, I would hope so, right? It's my show. I would hope that this is cool shit. Otherwise, I'm just another talking head out there throwing out the same shit everybody else is. Okay? Which I had a student last night mention this, right? I asked, what value are you getting out of the training, right? And one of them said, it just keeps going, right? There's just more and more and how everything's connected and that kind of stuff. And what they went on with was they could go across YouTube and look at all this stuff, but with rare exception and minor, deviations or variations or whatever, everybody's teaching the same stuff the same way. Well, that's what an instructor does. They get data and they pass on data, right? But a teacher should have spent more time, because part of being a teacher is being a researcher. It's about having experience in that realm, okay? There's a small percentage of us within the Bujinkan or just within the martial arts itself, right, that have actually used what we're teaching in a fight. There are a whole bunch of people that have been in fights and have learned this stuff and are teaching this stuff, but there's a disconnect. And there's a whole bunch of people that have learned this stuff but have never experienced what it's like to be inside that bubble, getting your ass kicked, okay? So that's Hatsumi Sensei used to ask, which star will you set your ship's navigation to, okay? Anyway, all right, so we're going to focus on those three things. The last one is that we're going to take a look at are the benefits of Kamae, right? What advantages does any given Kamae give you in making your job easier at defending and making his job more difficult, okay? It's really important questions to ask, okay? Because otherwise you're just trying to be another trained monkey, okay? All right, but first, let's take a look at what Kamae are, especially in relationship to this idea of a stance, right? How they're different from stances, okay? So first, the word for stance in Japanese, right, is Tachi. Most of you probably haven't seen Tachi if you've done like karate type martial arts and whatnot. You haven't seen Tachi, you've seen Dachi. And this is just a linguistic thing, right? This is a suffix. It's an add-on, nekodatsu, those kind of things, right? So, but the actual word itself is Tachi. This just changes to a D sound instead of a T sound because of what it's following, right? Don't worry about it, right? Tachi, Dachi, that kind of thing, right? Not Tachi, a type of sword, right? Different kanji, okay? So, a Dachi, right? So, stance, okay? So, here's the thing, right? The kanji, right? The word Dachi, right, points to something very specific, okay? So it points to and it's named for the position, this is important, of the lower body, the lower part of your body, right? Especially the position of the feet, but it can also involve the legs as well, but typically the position of the feet, right? So what we're really looking at is a position for strength or a position for mobility, right? You have different stances. Some focus more on strength of position and some focus more on giving you the ability to be mobile, right? To be able to move around more freely, right? Sometimes a Dachi will do both, but typically they lean on one side or the other. There's a trade-off kind of thing, right? And if you have experience in this stuff, right, then you can dive in and take a look at it a little bit more from that direction, unless whoever you had as a teacher knew this and covered it from that perspective. But typically, Dachi, right, are like cannons, right? They're a position from which you launch your defense or your attack from. Yes, Sensei, but Kamae do that? Yeah. An aspect of Kamae. We'll get there, okay? So Kamae, okay? Kamae, right? Different kanji, right? Okay? So Kamae is harder to define, right? Kamae can be defined as a posture. Yeah, well, Sensei, it's like a stance. Yeah, well, maybe, okay? A posture, poise, right? What's poise? Poise is how you've set yourself up for something or your demeanor, that kind of thing, right? So could be physical, but it's more than physical, right? Poise, attitude. Okay, the good old tude, right? Attitude, right? How you're feeling. What are you thinking about? What are your judgment and conceptualization faculties doing up here, right? About the situation you're in, right? Can be defined as carriage, right? Not like a baby carriage, right? How you carry yourself. how you physically carry yourself, how you present yourself to the world, right? What's your, the presence that you give off, okay? I don't mean like Christmas presents. I mean your presence, right? That kind of thing, right? Again, the way you carry yourself, right? So posture, poise, it's like a body, mind, spirit, attitude kind of thing. Very holistic, okay? So it also points to this idea of being aware of your condition. Being aware of your condition, which itself is subject to what's going on around you or what's coming at you, right? Emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically, that kind of stuff, right? Certain things are happening, right? Kamae are very, very natural things, okay? Stances are developed for a specific purpose, right? Kamae, I want you to think about Kamae as a scientific broadening, or from a fight standpoint, right? We're taking something we already do. You're always in a Kamae. It was one of the first lessons I learned as a white belt. You are always in a Kamae. Now I can see people racing around like, when was the last time I walked around in Ichimonji and tried to open a door? Not that kind of thing, right? Kamae is your body's outward manifestation. If we're just looking at the body, it's your body's outward manifestation, right? Of what's going on inside your head and inside your heart. Mentally, emotionally, whatever, your body tells what that is. So when you're happy, your body does certain things. When you're feeling lazy or bored or what, your body does certain things. It takes up certain kind of poses, right? And you can see if you learn to read Kamae on people, right? Sometimes you call it body language, whatever, right? But the body will crystallize, right? If your mom ever told you, if you keep your face like that, it's going to stick, okay? In Mikyo, right? We know that that's true. And the body does the same thing. So if somebody's posture is naturally like this, where the shoulders are rounded and the head's kind of low and that kind of stuff, right? Then they are either sitting like this all the time, or they're always in a sullen, depressed kind of mood because they're closed in. And now the body has grown this way. So it feels weird when they open up and stand straight, right? It's very, very, very interesting, right? So again, right, it's also about being aware of your condition, okay? So where a stance is almost always physical in nature, right? Again, nekodachi, whatever, right? Kamae are holistic, okay? So Kamae are named for the point, named for and point to the position of the upper body, of the upper limbs, okay? Jumonji, Ichimonji, that kind of stuff, right? And the body as a whole, okay? And we actually point to something known as the three bodies, okay? So the body as a whole, so with the three bodies, it includes the mental and emotional state, okay? So it's very, like I said, very holistic in nature, body, mind, spirit. Everybody talks about this stuff, but typically when they get into doing their own training, or they get into the dojo or dojang or whatever, right? 99.8% of their stuff is all wrapped around what? Physical, what I'm doing to him. We already talked about that, right? It's technique oriented, right? Every once in a while, people come up with tactics and strategies and things, but they tend to be left to the individual student, what you're trying to do, what your goals are, right? This art, Kamae, and all that kind of stuff already come preloaded, right? We'll talk about this later, but this allows you later on, based on your condition, based on the situation or whatever, to select the right Kamae for the given situation based on either what you're trying to do to control him and manipulate him, or what you have coming at you and what's being manifested already, right? Whether it's defensive or, you're whatever, okay? So really important stuff to understand, all right? So, so we'll just keep going, right? So to understand the true power of Kamae, right, we have to break out of the habit. We have to break out of the tendency to see Kamae as stances, okay? Remember, I remind my students of this all the time. How we think about our training, how we define given things, right? Techniques, locks, hold, whatever, right? the way we define it by default limits how we'll do things and to what extent. It naturally creates a ceiling. It naturally creates a stopgap. And the only way to go beyond that, right? Now, a lot of people, they like that structure, right? Because now they can gauge themselves relative to other people, okay? But what if you're fighting somebody who is at the same level? Well, if you don't have something beyond that, well, then you're SOL, right? You got to fight just like everybody else, and you got to hope for the best. And I don't know about you, but I'm not a gambler. So the idea of, well, let's just get into this and we'll see what happens. No, that's a contest, okay? We're talking about survival. True Budo is about survival, right? It's about going back home, kissing your wife, husband, whatever, tucking your kids into bed, reading your grandkids a bedtime story, in my case, whatever, okay? So remember, how we think about our training, how we think about the art, how we define things by default automatically sets up a limitation, okay? So this whole Whiteboard Wednesday thing, right, and like the Kuden podcast on Mondays, right, are all about basically redefining, right? Learning what you didn't know, or giving you different perspectives on these things. That's what I got from my teachers, what Hatsumi Sensei was doing for decades with me, right? Giving me new ways to look at things so that I wasn't stuck and trying to do more, trying to create greatness, trying to create extraordinary results by acting like ordinary people. There's a huge difference, okay? All right, so let's dive into this, okay? So I got to keep an eye on the clock because I got to keep this at a certain level. And besides that, I got a class coming up, right? So, okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at Kamae, right? So to look at Kamae, we have to recognize that Kamae have three aspects or three parts, okay? So and I bet the most astute of you have already jumped ahead and said, well, there's body, mind, and spirit. You already said that, so what else could there be to be said? Well, saying something like a preschooler and understanding it at the degree that a high schooler or a college student or an expert would, two completely different things. You can use the words and still not understand. You can use your ears and still not hear or listen, right, and understand what somebody's saying to you. You can use your eyes and still not see something that's right in front of you, okay? All right, so three parts, right? So, all right, for the astute bunch, right, there's a physical aspect, okay? Physical aspect at its very base, right? Protection, right? But it's also a base for, so let's write this up here, right? Protection. It's a base for launching our techniques. Launching, punches, kicks, whatever. We'll just put the word techniques here, right? Okay. Still sound like a stance, Sensei. Yeah. Okay. It's a base for launching certain techniques. We'll talk about this in a bit. Okay. Remember, we have different Kamae that came from different lineages without understanding what the strategic, what the strategy, right? The primary combat strategy of those lineages are. The Kamae just look like stances. Okay. If I understand that the primary combat principle, one of the primary combat principles of the Gyoko school is to circle behind the attacker or end up behind them. Perhaps the Kamae were developed to make that happen easier. Okay. Right. Same thing, right? Anyway, so physical, right? So like a stance, right? But here's a difference. With equal focus on both the strength aspect and the mobility aspect. Remember what I said when I was differentiating stances and Kamae, right? Stances, typically, if you've been through that kind of training, right? I've trained in, I don't know, we don't have time to cover all of them, right? But if we understand stances, certain stances give us the ability to hold position and be strong from that position, to launch an attack or a technique from that position. Other stances, right, make it easier to be more mobile, right? Sometimes there's crossover, but typically there isn't. Kamae, they're always both there, Okay, so strength, and remember, strength in this art is based on positioning and leverage, not on how big your muscles are or how fast you are, or whatever. Okay, so strength and mobility. Let's see. Check my notes here. So here's something I learned as a white belt when it came to mobility, right? I need to be strong. I need to be on balance. I need to be in this good position, right? But I also need to be able to move easily in any one of 10 directions in an instant, in one move. 10. Forward, back, either side, right? The cardinal directions, the diagonal directions, up or down. Okay? So what I was taught as a white belt was if I'm in my Kamae and I can't move, right, one foot or the other easily without moving my torso first, my Kamae is wrong. Well, that raises the bar on what kind of skill level I'm supposed to have, right? Because unlike doing techniques, doing kata, where you're just going through this thing so you can learn the strategies and the tactics and the lessons being conveyed in a real fight, you don't know what he's going to do next, okay? So I need to be able to move in any direction because I need to move into the space that's created by his attack, right? His attack takes up certain space, but it creates space in other places because of the way it moves, okay? So if we can understand, right, like in the Gyoko school, principal concept of the first kata and the first scroll, koku, right, is to play in space, right? So not just making this shit up, right? Again, right, vagueness begets vagueness. And a bunch of people just, all they've done is replaced one martial arts style that they used to do with something they've turned into another style. This isn't about style. It's about strategies, tactics, that kind of stuff, right? And the techniques manifest because of those things, all right? So anyway, all right. So the other thing with the physical aspect is that your Kamae embodies the 3 keys of physical self-defense, okay? Let's change color here. Okay. 3 keys of effective self-defense. Of physical. We'll just stay with the physical at the moment, right? Physical self-defense. Okay. So if we get these, right, then our job is easier. Okay. So first is controlling distance. Okay. Controlling distance. If he can't get at me easily, he has a harder time at hurting me, right? The mantra for my white belts in the dojo is, if he can't hit me, he can't hurt me. And if he can't hurt me, he can't beat me. Thanks to Shidoshi Malmstrom for introducing me to that concept way back in the day, right? So if he can't hit me, he can't hurt me. That includes words, that includes emotional attacks, all that kind of stuff, right? But if he can't hit me, if they don't land, he can't hurt me. If he can't hurt me, he can't beat me, okay? So my new students, their first goal is to get really, really good at Kamae and really, really good at evasion. So they're damn near impossible to hit, grab, kick, or whatever. Okay? You control the distance. This is not a contest. We're not in a ring where you get points against you or you could get disqualified for not engaging. Right? Okay? You don't have to fight like him. Okay? And if you're following some kind of set of rules or some kind of moral and ethical imperative where he called my mom a name, so I have to fight, well, shit, dude. Okay? It's not the same thing. Okay. And besides that, those kind of fights, from a warrior standpoint, if you don't kill that guy, you've bred resentment and maybe the need for retribution or revenge. Right? Just because everybody in your world walks around that way and nobody's tried to shoot you from a freaking car driving by because of one of those incidents yet, doesn't mean there aren't people out there that if you're going to beat them like that, you better kill them. Or you better be really good at knocking them down and disappearing so they can't identify you and they have no idea who they're hunting. If you can't do one of those 2 things, then you better be careful about what kind of engagements you get involved in. Okay? Because bro and his family can always come after you and yours. That's the difference between a fighter's mindset and a warrior's mindset. Okay. One has a really small picture of things, right? All I have to do is win. You'd be the baddest mofo on the block. They can shoot you from across the street, dude. Okay. Or the big picture, doing certain things could produce what? Okay. That changes your training too. Okay. 2, right? So we've got distance, right? Being hard to get at. Okay. 2, we want to remove access, right? Remove as many targets as possible from his access. Okay. So if I take up, let's say, Seigan no Kamae, Ichimonji no Kamae, or Jumonji no Kamae, or whatever, right? The Kamae itself does this, right? It removes certain targets, right? If I do this one, right? That's why Hatsumi Sensei has always said, and I'll repeat this again several times before this is over, right? If you can't do Ichimonji, or this one, right? If you can't do Ichimonji, you can't do Taijutsu. Right? We're going to hit that body, mind, and spirit on the way through here. And I'm just looking at the clock. I better stop jabbering a whole lot and just get this stuff out so that you can memorize it and, go on to your next YouTube video or whatever, right? So controlling the distance, right? Which means this is the edge of no man's land, right? Do you know where that is for every Kamae that you have, right? And if you understand your Kamae, you know that this sets up a situation where he can only get so close before he gets jabbed in the eye or the throat or whatever. So he can't reach you, but you can always reach him. Okay. We had this saying when I was in the Army, right? If the enemy's in range, so. But our training, the way a ninja thinks, that's not always true. And what makes it not true is my weapon system has to be different than his. Okay. Said more simply, the way I fight can't be the same way he fights. Because if I fight the same way everybody else does, he's seen it, he's been there, and he has defenses for it. I have to fight completely differently. Okay. So if my weapon systems are different than his, and they have more range than his does, when he's in range for me, I'm still out of range for him. Again, thinking more deeply about what this stuff does for you. So I control the distance. I make it really hard for him to get at me as a whole, right? By removing most of my targets. Okay, now I'm picking this one, and I know people go, yeah, but a good Taekwondo roundhouse kick. I'm not going to do this Kamae against somebody who does that kind of art. Well, how do you know what he does? I do my damn research. My time spent on YouTube watching fights and techniques, I'm learning how different stylists fight and how they hold their body and how that cues and tells what their techniques and tactics are. So I can choose my Kamae in a way that doing something isn't just stuck on my preferences. It's based on him. What's the best tool for the job? If I need to unloosen a tight screw or nut, I'm going to grab a wrench or a screwdriver, not a hammer or a saw. This is no different, right? Okay. So I want to remove as many targets as possible. But the reality is that taking up any position, right? This lead leg is now out there. This lead arm is out there. My head, right? I can turn my body to the side and remove all these organs. But what about, right? So I cover that which can't be removed, right? So cover or shielding, right? These are the 3 benefits of Kamae. We'll revisit these things again, but the 3 keys for self-defense is also 3 benefits for Kamae, right? Well, almost, okay? Because we need to be able to move, okay? So anyway, that was physical aspect. Quick, hurry. I know you got things to do. I'm not all that entertaining. My jokes are stale. Oops, probably didn't have to erase that, but let's move to the next one. Okay, so physical aspect, right? So we have a mental aspect of your Kamae. Okay, all Kamae. Physical aspect, mental aspect, spiritual or spirit aspect, whatever, okay? So your mental aspect, right? So this is what your strategy is, right? What's your strategy? What are you trying to do to him, right? Where are you trying to put him? Or what are you conveying, right? What are you projecting to him, okay? In Kotoryu Seigan no Kamae, right? The strategy, right? Or the mental aspect that gets manifested, the message that gets sent to him is, I'm going to control you with my lead hand, the tip of my weapon, whatever, and my heart, my intent, which summed up and made more simple is you get to attack me when I say it's okay. Okay? So until this drops out of the way, you find a way around it, you're going to have a hell of a time. And if you really understand Seigan no Kamae, in whatever form it takes, right? They have different names, Tate or Munin Muso in Tate with a Hanbo, it's Seigan and a lot of other systems and whatnot. If you understand that, it's damn near impossible for somebody to get at you. But if you're just taking up a stance, then you're not paying attention to the weaknesses inherent in any position, right? He just like he can't do anything to you, right, without opening up certain targets on himself. You can't take up any position without, right? You need to know what those things are. So you can either manipulate him with them by presenting something a certain way, or making sure that you have it, you're not doing your Kamae or your technique incorrectly. Because if I'm too stiff this way, he can knock this out of the way or grab it. He can sweep my lead leg. Okay? But if I have things positioned correctly and this is just floating, when he goes to grab it, my flinch response, I can ride that off and bring it back. Or I can do teihodoki, right? Hand escape kind of thing, right? So anyway, mental aspects. Okay? So what am I doing to control him? Okay? So a couple of examples, I'm not going to write them down, but a couple of examples from certain Kamae, right? There's this whole presence about you that conveys to him, if you touch me, if you come me, I'll kill you. Okay? Just like I cover with Seigan, right? I'll control you with my lead hand, tip of my weapon, that kind of thing, and my heart, right? My intent. Okay? With Kosei or Hoko, those kind of things, right? Anything you put in this bubble, I'm going to crush it. Okay? I'm going to break it. Okay? And he needs to know that. Okay? And there's certain ways that you convey that. If you're just doing a stance, you're just taking up a physical position, and then the rest of it's left to your heart, your commitment, your passion, your intent. Not that those things are not doable, but that's not hardwired as a part of the stance. For a Kamae, the Kamae comes part and parcel with all these things because the Kamae is holistic. Okay? So if I'm feeling a certain way, I'm going to take up that Kamae because my body's already going to move well, and it's already going to reflect what it is that I'm doing or what it is that I'm thinking, what I'm trying to do. Okay? So anyway, so strategy, what I'm conveying to him. Okay? What are they? Okay? And then there's this spirit aspect. It's not your ghost. Okay? Although, as one of my teachers used to say, if you screw this stuff up, your family member better look good in black. Okay? So if you screw this stuff up, you might give up the spirit. You might give up the ghost. Anyway, all right. So the spirit aspect, right? This is how we feel that causes us to manifest a particular Kamae, right? I mean, if somebody's overwhelming me, I'm probably going to be in a position like this or whatever, right? Again, your body tells on what's going on the inside, okay? So it's going to cause me to manifest one. Or when you're in full control, right, what you do is the one you choose, you're choosing a Kamae that you're going to use to manipulate him, okay? So this is going to be different depending on the side of the training that we're doing, okay? So whether we're on the left or right type of training. I don't mean left side forward, right side forward. There's a left side to our training that's highly emotive. There's a right side to our training when we're in absolute control and we're just, right? On one side, things are going to look really rough and tumble. On the other side, shit, you can toss them around like Moryo Shiba and Aikido or Hatsumi Sensei or whatever, because you have control, okay? So one, right? So a left side, right? Seigan no Kamae is going to look more like this or whatever, right? Because you got caught off guard or you're being overwhelmed, right? What people try to do in the dojo is always do the right side training, right? Where everything's on balance and everything is good. And yeah, but if you're only training on one side and not the other, well, then you're walking into a fight like a cripple, because if it's not what you've prepared for, then you have to do what everybody else does and make up shit on the fly, right? And I don't know how that makes you any different than somebody who never spent any time, effort, or money actually training anyway. Okay. So, but that's just my take on it. You can do whatever you do, right? Okay. So at the base, right? At the base, I'm going to write this out here. At the base, we're going to come back to visit this again, right? The feeling, and this starts with Gyoko Ryu's Ichimonji no Kamae, right? The feeling in this Kamae, which can be extended universally across all your Kamae, right? I am so confident in my Kamae that I can win with this alone. Are you so confident in your Kamae that, but most people aren't, right? Most people have done what karate guys do with stances, right? It's necessarily evil to learn so I can get over that and learn the cool stuff. I'm going to say this again later. Kamae is the cool stuff, okay? I am so confident in my Kamae that I can win with this alone. When I take up one, right, this is how I'm going to win, right? In the base level training in most of the lineages, your kata begin with a given Kamae and return to that same Kamae. You never left it, okay? Look at your Ichimonji no kata. Look at your Jumonji no kata. Look at, okay? So at its base, I am so confident in this posture, in that I'm being authentic, right? My feeling, my strategy, my plan, my body's just a piece of that, right? This is not cockiness. This is not stubbornness. This is not arrogance, okay? If you need those, then you're not confident in your Kamae. Just like you're not confident in think about any kata. Any move in that kata should be done with the heart and the head, should be done as though that's the only thing you need. It will be the thing that ends the fight. But what do people do? They take up their Kamae, and the goal is to get to the end of the kata without making any mistakes. Well, that's okay if you're still at preschool or kindergarten level, because you're learning the kata. Once you learn the kata, then you start extrapolating the lessons, okay? So we got to be careful, right? Again, the way we define it is it's where we create our own limitations, okay? And as one of my teachers used to say, we'll end up becoming an accomplice to our own ass kicking, okay? Anyway, all right? So this is also tied to, well, anyway, so here's this. I'm so confident. I didn't want to miss something on my notes, right? So on the defensive side, right, this left side, the tiger side of training where it's highly emotive and all that, right? I'm actually doing something, my Kamae manifest. This is how I start my students because they tend to not be cold-hearted fighters when they come in, right? They're worried about things or they're being led by their emotions in a fight, which is normal and natural, right? So when we're doing Kamae like this, right, the name is Kokoro no Kamae. Kokoro no Kamae. Okay? Kokoro no Kamae. Posture or attitude or whatever of the heart. My feelings are manifested through my body. This is what's happening. When I'm in absolute control of things, right, and I'm on the dragon side of training, the right side of training, not right as opposed to wrong, right? When I've got control of this guy and I'm in the dominant position, now what we have is the ability to take up a posture with my body while concealing my actual intent inside. So the Kamae I present to him is not how I feel, what I'm thinking, or what I'm planning on doing. It's a trap. Okay? In this case, we're doing Kage no Kamae. Shadow posture. Okay? So there's a lot more to this. And again, I can't cover all this in even this short kind of thing, which is why on Fridays, we dive into some of these aspects a little bit differently, right? So there's a link down here, right? Click on that, do that kind of thing. If you've been on it before, you know how the process works. If you haven't, it's $5. It's $4.99. I actually don't get all that. I lose a big chunk of it in processing fees that PayPal charges me and all that kind of stuff. But you can get on a virtual, go through Zoom, watch classes actually going on here at the dojo, train along and all that kind of stuff, right? You get the recording for it afterwards. It is what it is, but you can dive in much more deeply and get a full class. If you want to do it more fully, we have a class on Tuesday. We have a class on Friday. I do this thing with Friday classes because it's kind of springboards off these things. But we also have a Tuesday class that we do the same thing. The folks that are in that are in what we call our Ninpo Masterclass program. When you go to that link right there, under each of the little buttons that you can reserve for $4.99, there's actually a blue link that will take you to a page and explain how, not only that you get those 2 classes per week, but I throw in a shit ton of stuff, books and all that kind of stuff that I've written over the years and other training to really round things out for folks, right? And that one's, whatever. Cheapest you're ever going to train with me. Anyway, so spirit aspect, right? So this is also tied to the Mikyo aspects, the full body mantra in the Gyoko school, right? There's certain mantra or certain mudra that you're taking up at the beginning of all these Gyokoryu kata and things like that, right? And there's a certain mindset, feeling, acceptance, recognition, whatever, that has to do with, if you're going to be here as a warrior protector, there's certain things you need to freaking get out of the way, or you need to accept, or you're always going to be led around by the fear of failure or the imperative or the need to win. And if that's what's leading you, okay, just like they say, you can't con an honest man, okay? You can't lead somebody around who's not looking for a specific end result, right? They're going to play in space. Got something going on here. Anyway, right? They're going to play in space. They're going to let him lead the dance, okay, until he makes that mistake, okay? All right, so again, in this Friday's class, we're going to be exploring these 3 concepts, again, much more deeply, right? But as an overview, let's very, very quickly do this quick overview here on what I just covered. And part of this was what we're going to dive into on Friday. But because, again, it's a 75 to 90-minute class, but it would take me a weekend seminar to do any kind of justice to this as a minimum, okay? So as an overview, right? Here's how to go beyond the stance mentality to look at and train with your Kamae if you're serious about really getting it and not just looking like you got it, right? Anybody can freaking dress up and walk. We see it in nature. We see it in society, right? If I dress up, if I get you to call me certain names or whatever, I'm not having any freaking arguments with people about any of these things, okay? You can call a dog's tail a leg, but it doesn't make it a leg. Same thing. You can call your Kamae a stance, but it doesn't make it a Kamae. Okay? Be careful, right? So, again, from the physical, okay? From the physical, we have 3 benefits of Kamae. Right? 3 things that Kamae teach us, but these 3 benefits, right? So we have balance, right? That's caused by what? Alignment of the body parts, right? Properly, right? Mobility, right? That's how we're distributing our weight across the legs. So it's easy to move a leg without moving the torso first. Of course, my torso moves when my leg moves, but if I have to, let me change myself here. If I have to do this before I can move my leg's going to get swept or broken every time somebody engages with it, okay? And cover. It protects my targets a certain way. So depending on his fight style, it behooves me to know my Kamae so well that the one I take up is not the one I like, or it's not my preference. It's the tool for the job. It protects the targets that he would have easiest access to because of whatever fight style he uses, okay? Most people stop at, since I'm in ninjutsu, since I'm in Bujinkan, since I'm in Shotokan, so whatever, right? They stop at defending against the same stuff. That's why when they go to competitions or whatever, everybody looks like they're doing the same shit with slight variation. The biggest thing that's different in most competitions between the fighters is the color of their uniform and their sparring gear. Okay? So anyway, so from the physical, we've got these 3 benefits of Kamae, right? If you look at your Kamae with rare exception, like Hachimonji, Hira, those kind of things, with rare exception, all of your Kamae force your opponent to attack over or under one or the other or both of your arms and expose himself to counters when he's trying to get at you. To get at you, he has to come over or under at least one of your limbs, which means even if you have dust, tears, blood, whatever in your eyes and things are fuzzy, your flinch response will create a block. Right? If you're not lined up with him properly, if this is not your Kamae, if this is your Kamae, you have an opening. Okay? If this is not your Kamae, if this is your Kamae, let me back up a little bit. See the openings? Okay? So again, I don't care how anybody else is doing it. I don't care how anybody else is teaching it. I don't care how anybody else thinks that they understand it. Right? Do this stuff against somebody on the street who doesn't give a shit what you think you know. And if you present something that's open, they're going to show you. Okay? That's all that matters. Okay? So learning this is more than just memorizing something and regurgitating information. Okay? Your life is at stake. You screw this up, it could be permanent. Okay? All right. So from the mental strategic, tactical side, it's all the same thing. All these things these all come from strategic thinking, right? How you think and process, or how you think about and process the situation you're in. How clear are you about it? What do you know about the problem, the situation, the fight style, whatever? What do you know about your stuff? How can you make that match up, right? The more options you have, the greater chances of success, all that kind of stuff, right? This is strategic thinking, right? Tactical application of techniques that are appropriate to the problem you're trying to solve. Okay? We don't apply English grammar to a math problem. Johnny, what's a verb? 27. Right? It doesn't make sense, right? It sounds funny, except that that's what people keep trying to do without doing anything more than memorizing stuff. Or as soon as they have to spar, they'll just do it their own way. Great. 2,000 years worth of warriors who have lived and died to make sure that we understand this powerful stuff. And you got some jackwag in the 21st century who learns that much of the training and decides they know it all and they're just going to do it their way. And it could work for you. But don't call what you're doing this thing that you say you're doing. Again, calling a dog's tail a leg doesn't make it a leg. Okay? All right. So from this level, right, our Kamae controls him, right? We're talking about control here, right? Controls him by having specific, controls him by inviting, right? Controls by inviting specific types of attacks. My Kamae actually makes certain attacks easier for him and cover against other ones. Okay? So Seigan, right? If I understand that I'm not locked out here so he can attack or sweep my leg or whatever, right? If I understand this, I'm forcing him to either engage with these things and expose himself or to go around it. Because if he comes in straight, I'm just going to jam him. Okay? But that's very different from Gyoko Ryu's Ichimonji no Kamae, which invites a straight-on attack. He doesn't have to worry about going around anything. I've lowered it, and I'm going to look him dead in the eye because you're Metsuki, right? How you use your eyes, what you're looking at, and what you convey with your eyes is a part of the Kamae as well. Didn't cover that today. I said there's more to this. Matter of fact, for all my students, there's a worksheet they get for every single Kamae. They need to complete it. There's 10 aspects of every Kamae, not counting the lineage it came from, its name, its English translation, and how it fits into their curriculum. Okay? 10. Holy shit. What? Okay? The more you know. Okay? It's harder it is for him to blow smoke up your ass. So each Kamae invites certain types of attacks. It makes it easier for him. So we can actually manipulate this guy, let him think he has free will. Meanwhile, we've just opened and set the bear trap with a nice juicy piece of meat or, I don't know, tofu, if that's what he's up for, right? And when he takes it, the Kamae slams shut on him, okay? It also, your Kamae also allow you to gauge his ability, his fight prowess, right? What he's paying attention to, that kind of thing. Because if I set things up and make it easy for certain things, or I create openings or whatever, and he doesn't take them, either he's really freaking good, or more likely, he's not paying attention, right? So in the words of Ishizuka Sensei in Japan, I don't need 2,000-year-old secrets to defend against crap. So I'm not going to show my hand, because if I show everything I've got against somebody that that's not required for, I do two things. When revenge sets in, he knows what to look for the next time. And two, everybody else that's watching that might have designs on me later, I've just shown a bunch of stuff. And now they can prepare. Just like one football team who watches videos of another team playing, and you just reverse engineer their shit, and then you develop plays that'll kick their ass. Okay? If you don't think that's going on in the world, shit, you do it. You just call it watching YouTube. Okay? So if you don't think somebody else is going to do that, you're high on crack or low on crack, whatever it is, right? Anyway, the other thing that Kamae do is allows for technique and tactics and strategies and things like that of a particular lineage. It allows for the execution of that Kamae's lineage, right? The techniques from that Kamae, right? Or that, whatever Kamae that comes from, right? So if it came from Koto school, Gyoko school, whatever, it allows for the execution of that lineage's techniques to be done easier, more easily, okay? They were designed as a reverse engineering thing, okay? Not my words. People you might take more seriously than me, okay? Who knows? I could have just been like, you're eating lunch and, oh, that looks interesting. Let's watch this guy. Okay. If we get over the fact that he's old, he's gray, he's bald, and he's fat, I might have something to learn from him. Okay. If nothing else, I'm, eating up 45 minutes to an hour. Okay. So anyway, it allows me to do those things, right? One more, spiritual. I know these things are really long, man. What the hell's up with that? 40 minutes, an hour? This guy talks a lot, which is why we keep breaking these things down into smaller chunks for the easily distracted. Okay. And chances are they're not going to end up being my students anyway. Okay. So from the spiritual side, okay, Kamae create, right, and produce more, right? So from the spiritual side, Kamae is actually confidence as a tool. Okay? It's confidence as a tool, right? Think about this. You've learned all this stuff. When was the last time you took up something like this against a training partner or against somebody on the street, and the thoughts or the feelings that was going through my head were like, I know something you don't know. I don't know what I need yet, but, okay? It could be, remember that Kage no Kamae? I'm taking up this one, but I really feel like this one, right? So I'm taking up this one and I'm looking, I'm going to borrow my Henso Jutsu, disguise and impersonation. So I'm going to look like this, right? Make him overconfident, okay? What I know that he doesn't know is what he's looking at is bullshit. What he's looking at is a smoke screen, and I can't wait until he's doing whatever he's doing and making decisions based on what he sees, not what's really going on. Because he can't see what's going on. It's on the inside. Okay? Never show your hand. Okay? Now, so it's this whole, whatever, right? So all combined together, right? We put all those things together, the physical, the mental, and whatnot, right? Kamae, right? Are tactical, excuse me. They're Kamae as they're a tactical advantage. They give you a tactical advantage, right? If you're thinking beyond where your foot goes, right? They're a setup. They allow you to do everything from set up your techniques, right, to setting him up, right? They're a trap. Remember, they invite certain techniques, certain types of attacks, right? And they're the alpha and omega, the beginning and the end of all of your entire fight, right? Remember, I can win with my kamae alone, okay? This is the feeling in the Gyokko-ryu Ichimonji no Kamae, okay? First kamae that you learn in the first stage of training in the Gyokko-ryu, which is the pivotal hub of everything in the Bujinkan if you're in that system, right? So this goes right back to what Hatsumi Sensei has always said. If you can't do Ichimonji, you can't do Taijutsu. But he's not talking about a simpleton taking up a pose. He's talking about way more, okay? Way more, okay? So I'll leave you with this, okay? Unlike stances, we don't learn our kamae just to be able to fit in with our style, just as a base, right, to launch our techniques, or so we can move on to the cool stuff. What I have learned over decades of training in this art, what I've learned from using this stuff against killers. I mean, part of my history, for those of you who know, I was a military cop, which means that 80% or better of the people that I have ever arrested or had to get into cuffs or deal with or whatever were trained killers. Okay? So what I learned is that kamae are the cool stuff, and they're powerful in and of their own right. Okay? Again, it's a huge leap off of kamae equals stance, but hey, you either want to be good or you want to think you be good. Okay? That's it. That's all I got for this time. Hopefully, if you want to dive into more, right, there's that link, right, to the Friday virtual training. Get yourself signed up. Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, we will be diving into one aspect of this, right? Well, a couple of these. Just, again, we can only hint at so much in 75 to 90 minutes, but you can go deeper with it and hopefully get more out of it, right? And for $5, I mean, $4.99, Christ, come on. So anyway, hopefully I'll see you. And if I don't, I know that I've given you a ton to not just move to the next level. This will take you way up. This will put you in the 1%, top 1% of the people that train in this art, in the martial arts in general, or whatever, because of the amount of control this gives you. And the fact that you will not be thinking about, feeling like, or fighting like what he expects. So he's going to have to make shit up on the fly, trying to figure you out instead of you trying to figure him out. That's it. I'll talk to you next time. See you next week on Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. Have a great weekend? I'm feeling generous.